All right, moving on to chapter 11, Heart to Heart. Jack and Annie silently followed the guard to his carriage and climbed in the back. The guard flicked the reins, and the pair of black horses took off, trotting down the dirt path. Annie looked at Jack. I wondered where we're going, she whispered. Jack just shook his head. His worst thought was that the Great Mogul had changed his mind and wanted to punish them. The horses passed the mud huts, the men and the boys hauling hay, the women and the girls cooking outdoors. They passed goats and sheep and chickens. The horses clopped down the stone road. They moved easily through the bazaar. Jack saw that the silks and carpets were hanging on the lines again. Oranges, lemons, and pineapples were back in the baskets. Tent poles were all standing, and the bearded merchants looked happy and busy. The horses trotted down the street toward the Red Fort. When they came to the drawbridge, Jack expected them to cross the moat and head back to the palace, but they didn't. The horses trotted past the fort and down a road along the river. The sun was low in the sky when the horse-drawn carriage came to a square. The horses stopped before a massive red gateway with an arched entrance. The guard turned to Jack and Annie. You are to go inside and wait, he said. Okay, thanks for the ride, said Annie. The guard stayed in the carriage while Jack and Annie climbed out. They walked up to the looming gateway. Where are we? Annie whispered to Jack, and why are we here? If I knew, I'd tell you, whispered Jack. Jack and Annie stepped under the high arched entrance. Leading from the entrance was a narrow canal stretching to the horizon. In the sunset, Jack thought he saw a cloud of mist hovering above the ground. Then he realized it was a shimmering milk-white dome about 20 stories high. It seemed to float between the earth and the sky. There were 4 tall towers at the corner of a terrace beneath the dome. Jack and Annie just stared at the dreamlike vision. Then they saw a man walking along the narrow canal toward them. As the man got closer, Jack caught his breath. It was the Great Mogul. No guards were with him. He was all alone. The Great Mogul stopped and stared at them. His gaze took in their ragged, torn coats and bare feet. Jack panicked. They looked terrible. Would the ruler think they were showing proper respect for him? Bow, Annie whispered. Together they bowed from their waists and brushed their right hands on the ground. They straightened up, raised their right hands into the air, and placed their palms on their heads. Then they lowered their hands and stood perfectly. Still, Jack cast his eyes down, afraid to look directly at the Great Mogul. There was a moment of silence. Then the all-powerful ruler spoke. I have never read such writing before, or seen such artwork, he said. Jack looked up at the Great Mogul, but he didn't know what to do. Were they allowed to talk? Excuse me, Your Majesty, said Annie. Is it all right to speak? Yes, said the Great Mogul. Thank you. Well, Jack wrote the words, said Annie, and I drew the pictures. The Great Mogul nodded. Your story and pictures tell of riding through the world in a treehouse. You tell of saving a huge octopus, a baby gorilla, and a baby kangaroo. You tell of helping brilliant men named Leonardo da Vinci and William Shakespeare. You tell of rescuing children from a giant ocean wave from a sinking ship. You're a great storyteller, he said to Jack. Oh, not really, said Jack. He felt embarrassed. I just told about stuff that happened to us. The Great Mogul turned to Annie. Your pictures are filled with life and joy. They are rich and stirring. You're a great artist, he said. Not really, Annie said. Lots of people draw better than me. What you probably loved was the perfect printing of Jack's story and the sparkly colors of my pens. Yeah, we can't take credit for those things, said Jack. The Great Mogul almost smiled. The perfect letters and the sparkles were not what I liked best, he said. I like the heart in the story. I like the heart in the drawings. Jack couldn't explain why, but he thought he understood what Great Mogul meant. And now I want to answer the question you asked me today, the Great Mogul said to Annie. You asked if I loved anything. I could not speak freely in front of my guards or my foreign guests, but the answer is yes. I once did love someone very much, my wife. She was my best friend and the mother of my children. I wept an ocean of tears when she died. Oh, I am so sorry, said Annie. Me too, said Jack. You have shown me your hearts, said the Great Mogul. Now I show you mine. He turned and looked at the shimmering dome. This is the tomb of marble I built for my wife. It is called the Taj Mahal. Chapter 12. The meaning of the emerald. Jack and Annie and the Great Mogul were silent for a long time. The marble of the Taj Mahal seemed to change color as the sun went down. Against the darkening sky, it went from pale pink to orange and purple. The dome sparkled as if it were covered with 1,000 tiny lights. How did you make it sparkle like that? Annie asked finally. Stone cutters set precious stones in the marble, said the Great Mogul. Many were cut in the shapes of flowers and leaves. The emerald rose you chose today is like the carved flowers set in the Taj Mahal. It's really beautiful, said Jack. Yes, many say it is the most beautiful building in the world, said the Great Mogul, but hiding beneath the sparkling and magnificence of the Taj Mahal is simply the lonely heart of one person who loved another. The Great Mogul had tears in his eyes. He cleared his throat and looked away from them. And the elephant I gave you, where is she now? Actually, Jack started. He didn't know what to say. How could he protect Morning Breeze? We left her in the forest, Annie finished. She has a baby and she wanted to take care of. You probably didn't know this, but Morning Breeze was a new mom when she was captured. She's a good mother. She should stay with her baby. The Great Mogul nodded. I understand, he said. My wife was a good mother, too. The last thing she said to me was, please take care of our children. Do not worry. The elephant will remain in the forest with her children. Thank you, said Annie. Relax. Shh. Let me finish the chapter. The Great Mogul stared at them for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was kind. You are ambassadors from far away, he said, but you are children too. You should go back to your home, to those who care for you. A splendid idea, said Jack, trying to sound like an ambassador. Come, the Great Mogul walked with Jack and Annie back to the arched entrance and through the tall gate. He waved at the driver in the cart. Then he turned to Jack and Annie. Farewell, he said. Travel safely. Thank you, said Annie. Bow, Jack whispered to her. Jack and Annie performed their bow one last time. When they straightened up, the Great Mogul nodded. Oh, and thank you for the emerald rose, said Annie. It is a priceless treasure. You are welcome, said the Great Mogul. The rose was my wife's favorite flower, and as you know, emeralds stand for love. For the first time, a warm smile crossed his face. Jack and Annie smiled back at him, but the Great Mogul was suddenly serious again, as if he wasn't allowed to smile. He looked at Jack and Annie for a moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked through the tall gate, back toward the shimmering tomb of his wife. Jack looked at Annie. Let's go home now, he said. Jack and Annie walked to the guard in his horse-drawn carriage. Please take us to the trees outside the walls of the Red Fort, Jack said. The guard flicked his reins. The black horse trotted along the river in the pink twilight. They passed veiled women on the backs of elephants, white oxen pulling a cart, and small boys driving a herd of sheep. They stopped near the row of dark trees outside the Red Fort. This is fine. We'll get out here, please, said Jack. The guard gave them a silent nod. Jack and Annie jumped out of the cart. They ran under the trees to the rope ladder and climbed into the treehouse. Jack grabbed the Pennsylvania book. Before he made the wish, he and Annie looked out the window. In the distance, they could see the Taj Mahal. It glowed faintly in the hot night, like a shimmering cloud. Oh, wait, said Jack. I just remembered something. He reached into his bag and pulled out the note from Kathleen and Teddy. He read aloud, Ye say that ye wish your spell be reversed. 4 things ye must find. Here is the first. In the shape of a rose is an emerald stone that uncovers the heart of one who's alone. Jack put the note away. Our mission wasn't really done until now, he said. We were so worried about the emerald rose, we forgot the part about uncovering the heart of one who's alone. The Great Mogul. Paxton, you can't eat my book. The Great Mogul, said Annie. Even though he has 1 million of followers, he's really lonely. Jack and Annie looked out the window again. Goodbye, Great Mogul, Annie said. I hope your heart feels better someday. What? Say hi. Jack took a deep breath. He pointed at the picture of Frog Creek Woods. I wish we could go home, he said. The wind began to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster, and everything was still, absolutely still. Jack and Annie were wearing their own clothes again. Jack's bag was a backpack. A warm wind was blowing the trees in Frog Creek Woods. I'm glad it's not boiling hot here, said Jack. It feels good, said Annie. You still got the emerald rose, right? Jack looked in his backpack. Got it, he said. Paxton. He pulled out their note, their research book, and the blue bottle, and he left them in the corner of the treehouse. Then Jack took out the sparkling stone and held it up to the afternoon light. This is for you. This is for you, Penny, Jack said. We'll take this home and keep it safe until we see Teddy and Kathleen again. Good, said Annie. Jack carefully put the emerald rose back into his backpack. Then he looked at Annie. Home, he said. Jack and Annie climbed down the rope ladder. As they walked through Frog Creek Woods, Annie was unusually quiet. What's on your mind, Jack asked. Well, I was just thinking that it's really cool that emerald stands for love. Love was the reason for every big thing that happened today. How do you mean? Said Jack. He thought their day had been crazy. Well, we went on our mission because Merlin and everyone else in Camelot loves Penny, said Annie, and we love her too. Right, said Jack, and the Great Mogul gave us Morning Breeze because I loved her, said Annie. Right, said Jack, and Morning Breeze took us into the wild because she loved her baby. Right, said Jack. And we ran into trouble with the cobras because they loved their babies too, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. Okay. And finally, the Great Mogul showed us the Taj Mahal, which is the most amazing building we've ever seen, and he built it because he loved his wife, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack, you're right. Annie made it all sound so simple, and now I would love to go home, said Annie. Me too, said Jack. Hey, we can tell Mom you got an A+ on your story, said Annie. I'll print it out again. Yeah, I made copies of your artwork, said Jack, except the sparkles don't really show. That's okay, said Annie. The sparkles aren't that important. Right, said Jack. It's the heart that counts. And the two of them left Frog Creek Woods and headed home under the cloudless May sky. That's the end of A Crazy Day with Cobras, friends. I hope you enjoyed the story.